So the optimal learning environments we observed also offered 2 meals a day and a snack. And of course, as all ECD principals will tell you, this is quite expensive and very difficult to do. And they also prioritize children's safety and psychosocial well-being. So there are 2 critical behavioral factors here. One is identifying the principal's role as a networker and a joint guardian in the community. And 2 is promoting staff collaboration and support. Those are the 2 critical things that principals in the room can take away with them. And then third and last was that overall it's important to build an organizational culture that has care and motivation embedded within a cascading leadership model. So if we think about a cascading leadership model, the better a principal is at leadership, the more it can cascade down to practitioners as well as to children. So we found that practitioner attentiveness was a key factor in positive deviance, wherein practitioners were interested in children and observing them as they played or in all activities that they did, while they were supporting them, praising them, and even prompting their learning and directing their interactions with one another. So there's 4 key behavioral traits and aspects to take note of here. One is adopting a mix of child and practitioner-led activities, so being able to leave the kids alone to lead their own activities and practitioners alone to lead their own activities without this kind of constant need for the leader to step in all the time. Number 2 is being attentive to children's socio-emotional cues and being able to respond to them. And then noticing any changes in their engagement and prompting healthy engagements amongst children, and then encouraging them to express their feelings. Okay, and so based on these findings, we also developed a behavioral framework, which I'm not going to get into now, that kind of informs the design of potential future interventions. But there are 3 key things that I in closing, just want to leave with the room. So when we think about good leadership in ECD, we can take lessons from the behaviors of practitioners that we know do work, right? And if you're in the ECF community, you would know what sort of practitioner behaviors and being trained on these behaviors. But I think leaders can adopt those similar behaviors as well. So for example, we tell practitioners to stay close and observe children, and then to give specific praise when they see it. And the same applies for leaders. So we need to stay close as leaders and observe practitioners and staff, and then being able to give them specific praise. All of us know how it can boost your morale and confidence if your leader tells you you're doing really well, right? So that's a good behavioral trait from leaders. And then secondly, we can plan for intentional teachable moments in daily activities. So for leaders, it's about creating a learning culture and supporting staff to find their own way and answers. It's almost like a coaching model of leadership. So not being the person within the ECD center that holds all the answers and all the solutions for your staff, but encouraging them to find their own answers to their own issues. And then thirdly, we can encourage collaboration by asking simple questions of our practitioners to seek support from their colleagues. So really encouraging people to work together collectively, collaboratively amongst them, rather than always seeking your intervention. I will stop here, and I look forward to chatting more about how we can develop good leadership, and I will give my perspective as a leader in the nonprofit space in terms of what we can do to develop those kinds of leadership traits. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sibongile. Can I ask that you take a seat over there, because that's where you will all be seated. An impressive lineup of 6 women who are here today to help us come together and see what we can do going forward once again. And I'm now going to take the role of just an announcer, because we're going to run through these presentations quite quickly in the interest of time. We're next going to be joined or hear from Ms. Gugu Zulu, Program Manager responsible for the ECD and STEM portfolios at the Sasol Foundation, a teacher by training. She has more than 30 years of experience in the education sector. During her time as a government official, that work afforded her the opportunity to work in education planning, as well as policy implementation and monitoring. As you've heard, she's got extensive experience in program design as well as management, and has in fact been involved with designing and implementation of interventions for ECD and STEM over 15 years. She holds a master's degree in public management and development. Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Guguzulu.
All right. Is it afternoon already? All right. Good morning, and all protocol is observed. So I work for the Sasol Foundation, and Sasol has always been investing in ECD. We've been investing in ECD as Sasol for over 30 years. And in our investments, we started off as an organization that invests purely because we wanted to provide a safe place and enable a care work, parents to go and work. And we evolved and started having an interest in ensuring that when children are at these daycare centers, they are stimulated, and there is learning that happens. So, and they're enabled to achieve their full potential. So, we have a number, or we had a number of programs back then. We still have quite a bouquet, but we are now more and more trying to streamline what we do, to be aligned to the development goals of the country, to be aligned to the strategy of ECD in the country. And but historically, the type of programs that we supported as Sasol included the training, both credited and accredited training, leadership training, where we focused on general management and leadership of the owners of the centers, and toy libraries, nutrition, infrastructure, safety training, resources, and advocacy. We currently, in our network, we are supporting about 300, in fact, over 300. I've indicated 330 there, and this number continues to grow. And we've trained in the last 5 years 400 practitioners and managers. And in 2019, perhaps I should start by saying that before 2019, we then decided that we have all of these programs that we are supporting, and perhaps we need, and a lot of the times how we got to support them was that we would get implementing partners applying to Sasol, for funding, and then we would then respond, and we then started to, and most of these interventions happened in our fence line communities. These are communities that are closest to Sasol operations. So we then decided that we need to be more proactive. We have a Sasol Foundation, and all of these ECDs were happening as part of CSI. We're supporting business, and now we need to get into, or rather to align with the Sasol Foundation, whose mandate is to is education, basically, and work with government to innovate and to ensure that if there are any systemic innovations or solutions that need to be tested or even designed and tested, we work with government to solve systemic issues in STEM in particular, because our business is dependent on STEM subjects. So in 2017, we then at the center, which is now a CSI at the center, decided that we are going to take a more proactive role, where we actually design the interventions ourselves and then go out and look for partners that will then implement with us, or co-create and implement with us. So we went out and it then turns out that the first organization that we approached focused on leadership and management development. So they told us, this is what we focus in and or focus on, and these and this is why we do it. So we then partnered with that organization. In 2019, then the the Sasol Foundation, so I was in a CSI at the time, Sasol Foundation, the strategy now at the foundation then changed and to include ECD. It wasn't a focus area at the time at the foundation, it was a focus in CSI. Then we then had to align with the foundation. And in our alignment with the foundation, when we were asked, but why do we want, are we, as the foundation, are we not spreading ourselves too thin? Why do we want to get involved in ECD? And the reason shouldn't be we want to provide a safe place. It shouldn't be, it must be educational. And so we then, with our trustees, agreed that reality is that as a foundation, we focus on STEM, and we are unable, even in our bursary programs, we are unable to get as many people to fund in STEM education because we don't have a solid foundation of STEM education. So if the ECD is broken, it affects everything else. It affects the entire value chain. Therefore, at the end of the day, we are adversely affected. So it's important for us to strengthen the bottom. So that's why the Sasol Foundation is involved. And we see ourselves as transformational pathfinders, at least that's our ambition in education. And we want to contribute to the production of human capital in STEM, so because we understand that yes, our business it depends on these skills, but also the country, countries that succeed have very strong STEM people in the STEM fields. So that's why we are in this. So in 2019, then we had a round table where we invited the likes of your Linda Biesteka, experts in education in ECD, to advise us on what good looks like. So we, out of that exercise, we had a blueprint that then kind of directed our investments in ECD. So what did we find out in the programs that we funded? One, I indicated that the first organization that we worked with sold us, for lack of a better word, sold us a management and leadership course. And it focused on a holistic management of centers. So we did, which included learning and develop. Yeah, now this is small. Okay, I'll look at that. Which included learning and development needs of children, focused on governance. Oh, no. Governance and compliance, administration, financial management, and a lot of those contributed to how the centers are better managed and that they meet the requirements. And I think the speakers, both Lorato and Lucy, spoke to some of those, how when they didn't have that training, how that affected them. So we focused on that. And then we also had a very strong element of on-site support. And because we then realized that a lot of the times when the managers got the training and there was no follow-up support, a tendency is not to implement. And then we also provided them with resources, including computers and a basic equipment that they needed at the centers. And I think it was Lorato that indicated how important it is to have the right resources to enhance practice. So what did we learn from that support, you know? So as the foundation, we are hands-on. And this is the leadership aspect that I want to speak to. So we are the funders, and we ourselves as a foundation are funded by SASOL from the dividends. SASOL is our parent organization, and we always have a task to convince our executives about why we should be funding Project X and not Project Y. So we tend, as program managers, to be activists ourselves. We tend to lead, and we go out there and we do our own monitoring. We don't depend on what we read in the reports and what the implementing partners tell us. We tend to go. And we found that there was, whilst before, when you asked people, because we interacted, I'll give you an example. We had with this program that focused on leadership, we had 70 centers that we supported, 50 in Rustenburg and 20 in Bronkhorstspruit. And before we funded and we onboarded the centers, we actually went to visit to see the before, and then we went later on, and in fact we kept going. And after about 2-3 years, we then noticed that there was change in what happens in the classroom. The centers now have a bit of structure. They are offering structured learning programs. The leaders are guiding the centers and ensure that lessons are planned, there are menus and all of that, and the stimulation that happens at the centers. On the financial management side, it was Busi, was it Busi or Lorato, who said, hey, when they told me about banking, I thought, okay, what the heck? But we also found that there to say that people were not willing to do banking. They didn't want to formalize their businesses. And with the guidance that they got, they started having bank accounts, ensuring that they have cash flow, this and that, and they manage their finances better. And then administration improved. People, centers had policies, and there was improvement in compliance, as well as infrastructure. That was a big one. Because we supported them with resources, managers then took responsibility for their finances. They could put away some money, and because we also provided food, you know, and the porridge and all of that. So money that they would have spent, for instance, for breakfast, because we provided that, they then put it aside and they improved on their infrastructure. They started building toilets, ablution facilities, offices, and ensuring that they have, for instance, your sick rooms, all that they required to be compliant and to be functional. And then we found that as we go into the centers to monitor ourselves and engage with the leaders about parental involvement, a lot of them, when we started, they said we almost have zero parental involvement. And we then asked why, and the implementing partner told us that it's because, for instance, the meetings tend to be about money. So parents don't want, once you start saying money, parents don't want to listen to you. But then we then say, but how can we help them? if you've already identified that, what can we do to improve? Then the implementing partner said, look, perhaps we can have a course on parental involvement, and we then developed that course. So that's how we led as an organization and as funders in this case. So 3 years later, parents were coming to meetings, parents were participating because they would get feedback about their children, meaningful feedback, and wanted to participate in fundraising. I'm gonna move fast. So that is what we learned when we were going down, and not what the implementing partners told us. Then in about 4 years ago, we then decided that we would like to now get an external evaluation of the centers that we have been supporting. We had a baseline, we called it a baseline study, but we also wanted to also understand those your curious and many others that seem to be offering quality programs that are renowned. What are they doing right? So we said best-in-class model analysis. We did a study of that. And like I indicated, we have ambitions to be pathfinders. So all that knowledge then would then inform how we move forward. What we found when we did our baseline told us that when it comes to minimum requirements for registration, our programs are doing well. Our programs or our centers are also quite functional, actually highly functional. And but unfortunately, when it comes to the interaction and the experiences that learners get, we are lagging behind there. That needs improvement. Then, so most of the boxes we ticked, but the quality needs our attention. Then what does good look like in terms of what research says? We then found that what we consider as good and doing very well, those leaders have a strong instructional leadership in those centers. They promote learner-centered and use play-based approaches, and they also use technologies. Of course, most of them are are well off, and they are in your higher quintile areas. Then we also found that they tend to have ongoing professional development. So the emphasis is not so much on the qualifications. Yes, they do have people that are qualified, but the instructional leader, the manager or the leader, tends to have and schedule a professional development. And so it's ongoing, and that has a huge impact on practice. And then, of course, because they can afford to pay, the practitioners are motivated, and even if they are not paid very high salaries, but there's incentives, there's a way of recognizing a good practice, so they do well. And then they also have relevant learning and teaching support material. So the curriculum that they offer, is supported by relevant resources, and it's at a multi-level level. And they manage their resources very well, and they offer data for them is very important. So now, as the foundation, and in closing, we have taken all of these lessons, and we are going to use them in our, we call it a best-in-class model. We have developed a concept for it, and we will be piloting it at 2 sites in 2025. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Book. Thank you. You can take your seat over here. In the interest of time, can I ask that for the last 3 presentations, if we would keep it to maybe 5 minutes or less, if you're a miracle worker, that would be great. I'll do my bit also to not be up here too long. And in keeping with that then, our next speaker was referenced, in fact, in Sis Gugu's presentation. That's Ms. Linda Bierstecker, a development psychologist working in the ECD sector, previously head of research at the Early Learning Research Unit. She has extensive research as well as training, policy, and programming experience and materials development in South Africa as well as internationally, especially here in Africa. Here she is. Yes, there we go.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much. It's great to have an opportunity to share. By this stage, there's so little left to say that hasn't already been identified by our speakers, but I'm going to just share two studies which looked at management, and our evidence base is bigger and bigger about the importance of that. So actually, the first was a Western Cape audit of a large sample of sites in registered and unregistered in the Western Cape. And we measured using a classroom quality thing, which is quite widely known, the early childhood environmental rating scale, or the infant one. And then we designed an instrument around site management and support and so forth. And I think one of the things, the big takeaway from that, I've just focused on the management takeaway, there were lots of other takeaways, is that site management quality and weekly fees were the most important drivers and associated with the quality of the care environment and learning environment. But in sites that were charging less than 350, less than 50, this was about a good while back, but nevertheless less than 50 a week. In other words, the really sort of lower income sites, management quality was the predictor of classroom quality. So then last year, it came out last year, but in fact it was started in 2021, to complement the DBE census and Thrive by 5. DBE wanted to know, well, what actually makes for better, sorry, am I talking too loud? Thank you. What makes for better quality and how could they improve quality in classrooms? And this was quite a complicated design, but there was a survey of carefully chosen sites from the census, and then a deep dive, qualitative case studies of centres to see what was driving quality, and lots of interviews with people. So we looked at 4 provinces, and we looked at sites that were doing better than other sites in the same income band, okay? And we also looked at 2 that weren't doing very well. And we asked them a whole heap of questions based on the literature about what makes for quality. And you can see that the literature suggests that leadership, admin, professional support, a leadership style that is good, and understanding what should happen drive. Sorry, am I doing something weird? Okay. Are the things that are important for your management, and they affect your working conditions, whether staff get qualifications or not, how they are developed, and how motivated they are. And that then enables them to do a better job with parents. It enables the classroom quality and the interactions with children, and also a more inclusive environment for children with extra needs of different kinds, leaning to child learning and development. And quite obviously, your structural things like your policies, your operations, your financial strategy, and so on, feed into all of that. So the findings on management and leadership were that staff motivation, one of the things that I often find when I look at, I do a lot of audits, and over the years, principals stay, but staff turn over a lot. Most staff have between 2 and 5 years maximum experience. And that is because of working conditions in the sector. It's not a paying job. So what makes staff stay? Because obviously retention of staff is really important for keeping your trained people, for keeping relationships with the community and with children and so on. And what they found, first of all, is this passion. We've heard lots of passion from our people speaking today. And a supportive work environment is very intertwined with being a good teacher. So passion for the job means that people interact positively with children. And in every single, only one case study site, there was people talked a lot about, I'm here because I love and I'm interested in young children. was their main driver, because none of them were there for the salary, because there is no salary and the working conditions are tough. But what they also talked about was having a collaborative, supportive, positive work environment. So we support each